This year, 6 months in, January to June, we lost only 2 clients when we've been averaging, holding 20 clients as an average number of clients in those months. That's 10%, which is really good because we went back and tallied up those numbers for 2023. In 2023, we lost 11 clients total across the year. Across the year, we were averaging at that point 16 clients. A part of me wonders whether there's some level of economy. I kind of hate that when small businesses are like, the economy, because you're like, listen, like you're a small business. Like some macroeconomic factor doesn't necessarily dictate like what your growth is. Like we're talking about like 20 companies in the entire world.
Well, I would also say like, I don't know if every company is doing super well right now. I think it is kind of like a difficult time.
So you're saying I can't explain it by saying, oh, in 2024, like companies.
Just look at the economy. There's still tons of companies that are laying off people. You don't see layoffs when the economy is super healthy.
Okay, this is a recap video, which are going to be, or episodes, which are going to be shorter, quick recaps that are updates on the monthly progress of our agency. So just for folks that are maybe subscribing to this on YouTube or podcasts later, the origins of this show started off as us doing a grow in public. Is that what people call it? Build in public? That's the trendy thing.
It's typically build in public, but in this case, we're doing grow in public because we're not starting from scratch.
I've learned that I'm a boomer and I don't know like Gen Z lingo, including the entrepreneurial versions of this, like build in public.
Are you a boomer or are you a millennial?
No. Okay. Yes. I'm definitely not, just for the listeners know, I'm definitely not actually a baby boomer. That would be my parents. But I'm very much a millennial on the upper end of millennial. So, build in public. So I have more Gen Z terms that I was almost going to throw in there, but you're going to yell at me, so I'm not going to do that. This series started off as a build in public series. We since repositioned to just a marketing show where we talk about marketing concepts, but there is a segment of the audience that still likes the updates and the recaps, and they're good for us too. They're a good way for us to kind of get a sense of the state of the business, because without that you end up just spending every day like working off the to-do list and fighting the fires of the day. And so these will be the quick updates. This is supposed to be a June update, but because we're recording it a little bit late, it's July 12th when we're recording it. You'll be seeing it days later. We're going to just do June and July in one because we know the July numbers. We don't start new clients in the middle of the month. We only start them at the beginning. So June and July update. Key thing that we've been tracking and that we started off is client count. The previous version of this show was Double Your Agency. We started at 17 when we, or 17 or 18, I guess technically. I'm looking at the numbers now in January of this year when we started this show, and the whole goal of it was to double. June, we stayed at 21, which is, if you've listened to some of the other recaps, 21 clients is about what we've had for a few months. We talked in the last update of the May update of losing one of our longest running clients, but it was kind of a mutual parting of ways after 4+ years, which we thought was fine. But July, we closed a couple more, one paid and one content to hit 23, and 23 is our new all-time high of client count. And we can feel it from a day-to-day level.
Yes. Starting to get a lot more stressful, just in terms of managing stuff.
And a key thing at 23 is just having the team members to handle all of that. We are kind of at our limit of what our team can handle, or getting close to it. And our existing strategists, and we're trying to continue to grow and train our other strategists. So we'll talk about that in a second. But before that, I wanted to just talk about numbers-wise in terms of client count and growth of the agency. What's responsible behind that? That, from 18 to 23 and hitting this a new all-time high. And the big thing I want to point to is churn. We've talked about this in many of the other recap videos. We had an entire episode back in the day when this series was more, you can look it up, when it was more about build in public. We had an entire churn episode. But in short, this year, 6 months in, January to June, we lost only 2 clients when we've been averaging, holding 20 clients as an average number of clients in those months. That's 10%, which is really good because we went back and tallied up those numbers for 2023. In 2023, we lost 11 clients total across the year. Across the year, we were averaging at that point 16 clients that we were engaged with. So that is basically 69, almost 70%. So 70% of the average amount of clients we were holding, we lost. Meaning, the fact that we stayed at 16, it doesn't mean we lost 70% of business. It means we were getting clients to fill the hole, but it was just like churning through them, adding some and losing, and you're adding a little bit more than you lose. But that's just not ideal, not an ideal way to grow, as we discussed in that churn episode. So 2 out of 2020 means like we're on a run rate halfway through the year of losing only 4 instead of 11 when we're averaging a decent amount more clients, and that is fantastic. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think our process is very solidified at this point. I would say that is definitely something to do with it. So I would say in the first 6 months, I think we do a better job setting expectations from the get-go. So in our sales calls, I know that's something that we worked on a lot last year, was just vetting clients better and then doing a better job setting expectations around timeline. I think that's a key thing. And the other thing is, I know we moved into doing some yearly contracts. And so I think we have 4 of the new clients that are on yearly contracts. And so that obviously extends, at least for those 4 out of 20, how long they work with us. And yeah, I think just generally we're seeing good results across the clients. I don't know if we're seeing any clients that are having massive dips. I can think of like one where rankings have declined in the last few months, and we're working on fixing that. But I'd say overall growth seems to be very steady across a lot of our clients, even through the last few months, which have been super volatile because of all the Google updates that have been released.
Yeah, so that's your answers are on the agency side. A part of me wonders whether there's some level of economy. I kind of hate that when small businesses are like, the economy, because you're like, listen, like you're a small business. You don't need, like some macroeconomic factor doesn't necessarily dictate like what your growth is. Like we're talking about like 20 companies in the entire world.
Yeah, well, I would also say like, I don't know if every company is doing super well right now. I think it is kind of like a difficult time.
So you're saying I can't explain it by saying, oh, in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the economy. There's still tons of companies that are laying off people. So I wouldn't say you don't see layoffs when the economy is super healthy. So yeah, that's why to me, I want to focus on our own business and what we've improved from last year.
A big thing on the yearly contracts is how many of them are going to keep going after a year. If anyone who's watched those past episodes where we talked about that, the whole hypothesis there is when we did this churn analysis, we realized that clients who stay with us for at least 12 months stay with us for over 2 years. So we were like, oh, let's incentivize that. And we heavily incentivized it. Our standard rate on the website is $10,000 a month. That's what the vast majority of our clients pay. So we said, if you agree to a 1-year commitment, we'll reduce it to $8,000 a month, which is a heavy discount. 20% for an agency? A lot of agencies' margins are less than 20%.
Well, also, we have to say that we have since raised the pricing on the yearly because it doesn't really make sense for us to give that 20% discount anymore. Now it's 10%. So we do $9,000 for the year, mainly just because we've had a ton of demand lately. So we're kind of always on the edge of having too many clients for the amount of people that we have. And so anytime you have more demand than you can handle, it makes sense to raise pricing. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And I would also say that's another reason for the growth this year is we've had a decent amount of demand, like almost every month. I know, was the last one or the one before, we talked about how it felt like there was slow growth on the lead side, but I feel like even though we haven't had a ton of conversations, the ones that we've had have been
Super good.
very
Super
good.
qualified.
Yeah, so we're still closing at a decent rate. And so I'd say it's a combination of setting better expectations, delivering good results, and consistently getting leads.
So then that's the second half of what I wanted to talk about today is now our continued growth. To continue to do this. Like, we can take on another 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients, but maybe even 3 right now would be pretty good. But to continue to do this through the second half of the year and grow to 30, which I think was like at least my internal goal. I don't know if I said it on an episode at the beginning of this show or series in January. That's approachable, especially after we'll do the August recap. If things fall where we think they're going to fall, that's going to be very approachable. But to do that, we are going to need more strategists. So
yeah, we can even talk about what we're doing right now, because I don't think it's maybe normal for most agencies, but Davish and I are like new accounts because we don't have a ton of excess people. You and I are filling in on the strategist side. So in the beginning of working with new clients that we're taking on, they're working directly with us just because we don't have a ton of excess people. And then there's new people that are shadowing us and will slowly take over the responsibilities of managing the account. And I think that's how we're going to grow from here, because we have a ton of our experienced strategists are already accounted for on their accounts, and we don't have a ton of new strategists, and we're not going to throw a new strategist directly on a new account. And so in order to train a new strategist, they shadow us for a period of months, and then when we feel like we're confident in their abilities, then they start to take over more and more.
Yeah, and they shadow us for months after having been a writer with us for even more months. So just to sort of explain to everyone, and this may be a recap for some people, we have basically 2 key roles in terms of the delivery of the content and the content strategy. We have additional roles. Amethyst, who was on a previous episode, does our paid ads and analytics. And then we have Elise, who has been a project manager that handles a lot of the uploading and things like that for us for a long time. But the 2 main roles are writer and content strategist in terms of delivering the content and the strategy. Every single content strategist is a writer at heart, meaning they had to start as a writer. No one immediately starts as a content strategist. I'm pretty proud of that, in the sense that I think what a lot of clients are annoyed by is agencies where they just have like some new account manager. Like the agency literally just like hires for a role called account manager, and that person steps in and they're basically just a project manager. And they're like figuring out how the heck this agency works while they're quote unquote managing a client. That's a terrible experience for the client, because it's like pretty obvious these people don't know what they're doing. Clients tell us this, by the way. They literally tell us we are tired of agencies where we're handed off to someone who, I'm just going to say this, like because clients say it, don't shoot the messenger, is like a recent college grad, and they're just like, we got sold by the founders and this person doesn't know what we're doing, what they're doing. But for us, the person who's quote unquote managing the account, the equivalent of this like project manager or account manager, is the content strategist. And that person is a writer, meaning there is no intermediary of a project manager talking to the person who's like the expert. The content strategists are the expert. They have been a writer and worked with another strategist and written many pieces. So they're an expert in how we write content, how we approach the keyword, how we do SERP analysis to figure out what the intent is. And they already have a sense of what types of content work for keywords and what keywords we do. Then the most promising of those, well, I shouldn't phrase it like that. Good writers, they have to be really good writers to be a content strategist. I can and should say that.
Well, and they also have to want to do the strategy.
And they have to want to do the strategy, and has to fit into their lifestyle, which we'll talk about in a second. But like, they then, if they want to and they have interest in the content strategy and we have interest in that with them or whatever, we have that conversation and say, let's try it out. That's when Benji is saying, there's additional months of shadowing us, because what responsibilities increase there? Instead of just writing, now they are responsible for the keyword strategy, huge part of what we do. You can Google pain point SEO to see the basics of that. And then analytics, and just like, which is like measuring the leads, the multi-touch model, Google Analytics, and then client management, which is like client calls and dealing with that, which we focus on a lot. And so we run the client calls at the beginning when there's a new person, and when they see like a total rhythm, the client's very comfortable with them. They're very comfortable with the client. Everything is happening. They slowly take it over. Very manual, very hands-on. So we've had some advice given, like I feel like some sort of folks that kind of, I don't know, have given business advice. When we just like talk about this casually, they're just like, oh, like people don't understand. They're like, how could hiring be a growth limiter for you guys? Like just hire, just like put like a job posting out. And you're like, it's not that easy. And there's a previous episode about hiring an editor where Benji was kind of, straw manning that side of the argument. And me and David were, for lack of a better term, shooting it down rapidly. but the reason why we spend that effort is, one, we're obsessed with quality of service to the clients, and we're not okay with just like someone kind of mangling how the service is, and we're very hands-on there. But also, we did this analysis before this recap. Another reason is it pays off, because we looked at the average tenure, not average, we looked at the individual tenures of our 5 longest tenured strategists to date, and they are 4.1 years, 5.2, 5.2. Those two literally started in the same month. That's crazy. 4.6 and 3.4 is our youngest of that group, or in terms of like tenure with us. And they're still working with Grow and Convert. So 3.5 to 5+ years and growing. That's awesome.
It is awesome. Also, considering we've only been an agency for 7 years. So most people have been with us over half the lifetime of the agency.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. That's a really good point. So it's worth it for us to spend a lot of time training and working with strategists, because knock on wood, they're spending a lot of time continuing to work with us and working at Grow and Convert. So that's kind of where we are. Like, we have a bunch of writers. David was on a previous episode, and he's done an amazing job of just like the recruiting, going through applicants, the training process. After they pass our test project with him, they then are basically continue the test project on real live client pieces with a lot of coaching from either combination of him, of one of our other strategists, of me, of just like coaching to try to get them up to speed. And again, the ones that are really strong writers then move to strategist, and they become an editor for another writer. And according to this data, last with us for years, which is amazing. But it's kind of this, you get the benefit because you put all that time in, but you still got to put the time in. It's like a slow growth thing. We don't do the thing that a lot of companies do, like tech startups and then maybe other faster growing agencies, which is like when you get a bunch of client demand, you just hire a ton of people and just go for it. We're not comfortable with that. And in a weird way, this is going to sound funny, but I mean it carefully. I think you would agree, you and I, are comfortable with the fact that we're not comfortable with fast growth. Like we're very self-assured on that. Like, this is something that we have decided from a strategy level in the business. Like, quality of client service matters most than everything else, more than growth. And carefully curating and coaching the team, making sure that everyone is a culture fit, making sure that everyone can do it well, and like giving them one-on-one feedback. Like, we're just sort of okay with the limits of that, because that's really important to us.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of something I posted on Twitter yesterday. I don't even know if I sent it to you, but I got this ad for this agency accelerator, and it was positioned as like the Y Combinator for agencies. And I was just making a comment. Well, I was making a comment that I just think that's horrible positioning.
What? When you said Y Combinator for agencies, I perked up. I was like, ooh, sounds
Really?
good.
Oh, that's interesting. I had the complete opposite reaction, because I don't think agencies should be run like a BC business. And so when I see someone trying to portray an agency as some high growth business, I dismiss it, because I think that mindset is what's wrong with a lot of agencies, where exactly like you're saying, most agencies care about growth over quality of service and will try to grow too quickly and hire quickly, throw people at problems instead of actually taking the time to solve the problems and then throwing people at the problems that are solved. And so, yeah, I saw that and I said, to me, that seems horrible. I wouldn't want to go to an accelerator program that teaches you how to grow quickly, because I think from a client experience standpoint, I think that it's those kind of agencies that get themselves in trouble, where they grow very quickly, they hire quickly, and they hire on all these junior people who are not very well trained, and then the quality of service goes down and the reputation of the agency also falls with it. And so, yeah, I don't know. That kind of speaks to just like the difference in mindset. I think for you and I, of course, we want to grow the business, but we also don't want to sacrifice the quality as we grow. And so we're very intentional about the way we grow, who we hire, even the clients that we take on.
I do wonder if, like, sometimes the thought crosses my mind of like, are these other agency owners whose names are behind them like not embarrassed when some new employee like mangles, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a big part of me is like, I would be too embarrassed if we just had like a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing, just like managing clients and giving, like, I'm just not okay with the idea of something that's this.
I think part of the difference is that we're still client facing. So we still have to interact with the clients. Whereas I feel like a lot of these other agencies, the people who are in charge are just kind of behind the scenes. They don't have to hear from the client that something went wrong or bad experience. And they're probably just more of like the churn and burn agencies, like where they have clients for 3-6 months, a year, and then they're constantly bringing in new clients, and that's how they grow, regardless of like how big their churn rate is. But it's just a different type of business. Like, yeah, maybe if we were solely focused on ads and setting, like onboarding new clients didn't take as much time and energy, we could be more like that. But for a content business where the results take months and the initial investment on our side takes a lot of time and energy, it doesn't really make sense to be that kind of agency.
Last topic, the work environment and what we're proud of and why we think at least these 5 strategists and or strategists in general are staying for 70% of the life of the company so far, but 4 and 5 years plus and counting. I guess, and a lot of them watch this or listen to the show, so they can comment to us, at least on our Slack, and maybe we could have like done a little survey and asked them. But I'm just going to give my hypotheses, like things that we're proud of in terms of the work environment that allows someone to stay for a long time. What you and I talked about before we started recording is a couple things. One is we think we pay pretty well. You can maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at like the pay for all the strategists, it ranges from, on the very low end, $50K a year, and the only reason it's $50K is because those strategists are working part-time. So I would say some of them less than half-time.
Choosing to work part-time, which I'll talk about in a second.
And then on the upside, the people that are working full-time are somewhere between like 110 and 130K a year. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of like that is something that we've always prided ourselves on and thought about doing differently, is that someone can scale up their work to a full-time level and make a lot of money, or someone can work part-time and either they have their own business on the side, maybe some of their own clients even. Usually it's not in the content space, it's like doing something else, but
or just other things happening in their life.
Yeah, or like, yeah, some people have they're also going to school, and so they're choosing to work part-time with us and then go to school for the other time. Or some people have a family, and so they want to spend more time with their family and not have to work a full-time job but still make good money. And so yeah, the work that we do provides that flexibility in terms of someone could just take on one account and someone could work up to typically 4 accounts as their limit. And at that 4 account level, they're making well over 100,000 a year.
And the characteristics of the job is what I wanted to talk about. So that amount is what they're making in a job that is fully remote, which we used to say that like it was a cool thing, and then COVID hit, and now like everyone says that. Although it's gone back. Most companies are like, we're demanding in office again. We were fully remote before it was cool. Before COVID.
But also being remote for other companies is different because I would say we're remote first, and I think that is part of the culture. Whereas like some people say remote and then they have like the thing on your screen to make sure that you're working, or like you have to check in the morning, or you have to be on Slack at all times, and if you're not green, they're like, what are you doing, where are you? Culturally it's very different. Like for us, the focus is, are you getting your work done? Like we don't really check in on when people are working, and so that I think is very different culturally. So
Yeah, when Benji says we're remote first, it means we have never had an office. We will never have an office. Benji lives in San Diego. I live in San Jose, where the burritos are better than San Diego.
that's not true.
And so are the waves. And you notice how Benji didn't comment on surfing and just laughed, but he definitely commented on the burritos.
Well,
You can see which one
saying
he's really passionate about.
Well, you're also saying the waves are better, and you live in a landlocked place. So good luck with that.
Santa Cruz. You could drive there, 35 minutes. So we've never so the culture that we've built is like a company that is and has always been remote. But then what Benji's talking about, some of this like there's no like you have to be green, you have to be online at these hours. There's remote, so there's flexibility in location. Then there's flexibility in time. It's also fully flexible hours. What do we mean by that? Yes, if you are a writer, we mean that literally. Like, I'm not sure anyone cares if you are a writer, grow and convert, when you could write at any part of the globe at any time, and if it's done, it's fine. It also means that work process-wise, we have built systems and processes that are very conducive to asynchronous communication. Our core like project management system happens in Trello. The back and forth of pieces happen in Trello. I'll get to Slack in a second. And so it's totally the natural rhythm of working doesn't demand necessarily that you're online at the same time. Like we have worksheets, we have processes in Trello, we have things like organized in a way that it's like very conducive to that. I think that's a subtle but very important part because here's why. I think there's a lot of companies that, like you're saying, they say like, oh, we're remote, flexible, blah, blah, blah. Even if they don't do that big brother stuff that you were talking about of like something on your computer that's monitoring you or you have to be online, even if they don't do that, let's say they don't do that, the natural rhythm of just like what the work is, like we're not specifying what type of company, but like how the work is done means that you're gonna feel excluded if you're not online when everyone else is online. If it's like a typical company that like operates in meetings where like all of the work is done in meetings and everyone's just sitting in meetings all the time, like who cares if they advertise that it's flexible and you could go surfing in the middle of the day or eat a terrible San Diego burrito in the middle of the day that has no rice in it, which makes no sense. Like it doesn't matter that you can do that because everybody else is in meetings getting things done and you're not going to advance in your career. You're going to feel excluded from the group because that's how work is done. That's not the case for us.
Yeah, that's accurate. In terms of like the meeting culture, I would say that's how very much how most companies are, where they have meetings scheduled all throughout the day. So if you're not on your meetings, you're in trouble. And for us, we rarely have meetings. All of our meetings are basically the first week of the month, and people are only required to go to their own client meetings. And other than that, we don't really have team meetings. And so most of the time spent working is just doing the work that you're responsible for. And you can just do that whenever you want.
So then layering on top of that is, of course, reasonableness. Let's be reasonable. We do have Slack. And when you're a content strategist, yes, some level of overlap, reasonable overlap is useful. In particular, like there is a monthly client call. But so a lot of our clients are in Europe.
Yeah,
So
well,
like,
so are strategists. So I would say like from a time zone perspective, yeah, like in the morning for us, people are ending their day in Europe, and so there's usually like 2 to 3 hours of overlap in the morning, just when people have questions, or maybe people asked questions yesterday and we're getting back to people. But then there's a decent amount of day where like a good portion of our team doesn't overlap when they're working.
yeah, and what I was going to get at is like, because we don't have a set time zone, like Benji and I are in Pacific time zone, which is kind of the latest out of anyone. There's like a couple more folks on our team in either California, Washington, etc. And then there's folks throughout the US time zones, then into Europe. If you're spread out that much, what are the set hours? Like, I always feel weird that I'm the latest, or I'm slowing everyone down because I'm like Pacific time. Plus, I have two small kids, so the like times where I have to do morning drop off, I can't like start working until 9:30 in the summer because of the summer camp stuff, and so it's like 12:30 Eastern and what, like 5:30 p.m. for folks in Europe. So I know everyone's just like, oh, Davis, like, when are you going to respond? But so there is no set hours, and so but there's some level of overlap. Now, that's second level of flexibility, and then I think we're proud of, like, we have a Slack culture. Like, people are online, they can communicate when they want to, when they're, and there's some like natural overlap, right? Like, we don't have a bunch of night owls minus maybe David, who like sometimes just is like, I'm in Korea, and you're like, okay. And then, or he's like somewhere else and he has to wake up at 4 a.m. to do this. But that's David. He does his own thing. So then we have this other layer of flexibility, which you started getting at when we talked about pay, flexibility of amount of work. And that, I think, is very rare. And that's also intentional on our side. Where does it come from? One, it comes from the culture of who we're hiring and what we're doing. Content writing, a huge portion of those people are freelance writers. They have chosen a profession where, like, it's important to them to have flexibility. And then, so we've added that where we're like, you can scale up, you can scale down. You want to get a master's, which someone is doing, one of our strategists is doing in some other field, like political science, whatever. He's going to listen to this and be like, Davish, it's not political science. It's like this other specific thing. And I'm going to feel really bad. But you can do that. If you are, want to spend time with family, you can do that. If you have a nonprofit or a side hobby, like, you can do that. And you can scale up or down on flexibility of workload. And I think what that enables is, for everyone, for most other typical companies, why do people not stay for years, 4 or 5 years? Why is that not common anymore? Because in 4 or 5 years, your life circumstances change. And if your company only offers a job that's 0 or 1, like you're either fully employed or not, a lot of people end up quitting because they need to like rethink things, or like things happen and it changes. Whereas here, they can scale up and down, and that enables us to continue that. And that's hugely beneficial on both sides. They don't have to worry about, finding a new job. And for us, all of our time spent training continues to reap rewards. We don't have to keep training new people. So that's the plus side that we're really proud about.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.